Thanks, Carol. Hi, I'm Nikola Miller, the Planning Policy and Practice Officer for RTPI Scotland. I was asked to chair the working group on planning for the what was the low emission strategy, now the Cleaner Air for Scotland. And I also sit on the Scottish Urban Air Quality Steering Group, representing planners and the planning system. And the Institute's really pleased and honoured to be involved in it. And it's really good that to be working with the Scottish Government and all the other partners on the strategy. And Carol is our representative for the Institute on STEP. So we've been involved with a lot of these issues for a while, and it's great to come along and speak to you today. So why placemaking? The section within the Cleaner Air for Scotland's strategy is about placemaking. And as part of the journey of the strategy, I think we started off talking about development a lot, which has very specific connotations of new development, about new things being built. And placemaking, I think, is a much more positive term, and it's actually much more realistic about what we're trying to achieve, because it acknowledges that what we're talking about is existing and new development. We're talking about the whole place. It's a much more holistic term. And it's also a bit more about people, I think. I spend a lot of my time talking about planning being about creating great places for people and about shaping great places for people. So I think placemaking is a bit wider, and it puts people at the heart of it as well, about the whole place. And I think people understand what their place is, and it's maybe a bit easier to understand if this document is meant to be for us as professionals, but also for the general public to understand as well. We've heard a few people talk, Stephen started off saying this morning about, that greenest mile is the mile not travelled, and I think that fits in very well with the placemaking agenda. At the heart of the placemaking agenda is about encouraging new places or existing places to be places that allow travel by other methods other than the private car, and also encourage behavioural change so that people are living, working, playing, visiting in an area which encourages them to make that choice, and a positive choice for the environment. Places that are designed around people and that have positive benefits in terms of health and well-being. So one of the things I'll come back to is that actually what I'm talking about, it's not just specific to this placemaking section of the strategy. And as Carol said, it's very much planning as a discipline is cross-cutting, and this placemaking section is very much cross-cutting across the whole strategy. So it fits in with transport, with health, climate change, sustainability, a lot of other important parts of the strategy. So as Carol mentioned, the placemaking section sets out a clear objective, and that's following on from the ambitious vision that the strategy itself sets out, and we've heard it several times today about Scotland's air quality being the best in Europe. I think, from my perspective, it's a really positive step. I know the initial consultation draft had a vision in there that was about the air quality being amongst the best in Europe, but I think this is a real positive change to have it us being much more ambitious, and I think that's something that we would certainly support, but it only works if we achieve it, and I think that's a key point to the strategy. We need to actually achieve the vision. So I think the sector kind of specific actions, placemaking being one section of it, that's where they come into play. So if we're aiming for a Scotland where air quality is not compromised by new or existing development, and where places are designed to minimise air pollution and its effects, that's quite clear objective set out. So planning's got a really important role to play in creating sustainable places for people that are vibrant, healthy, to live, work, shop, play within. And it also follows on that good placemaking makes places more attractive to investment and to business, and working towards the Scottish Government's key aim of sustainable economic growth, where we're encouraging competitiveness and businesses to thrive. just a wee bit about what we already have in terms of a policy context in planning. So if good design and planning can make a difference to air quality, it's actually in there already at the national level within National Planning Framework 3 and Scottish Planning Policy. They are the Scottish Government's national planning framework and policies for Scotland, and we have a plan-led system in Scotland where we have a hierarchy of plans. So these national level plans inform strategic and local level plans. National Planning Framework and Scottish Planning Policy set out the government's spatial strategy. They're based around a 4-point vision for Scotland of a more connected place, a successful, sustainable place, a low-carbon place, and a natural, resilient place, very much relevant to the air quality agenda. As you can see on the slide here, the framework within National Planning Framework and Scottish Planning Policy support development that creates high-quality, sustainable places, reducing the need to travel. I won't read them all out, but you can see them up there. I think the air quality is implicit and explicitly stated within our national policy, and be open to hear what you think about it and whether that's strong enough in there. So we do have a commitment to move towards a low carbon economy, to plan in a way that reduces the need to travel by car and encourages different modes of transport. I think it's good that those commitments are there at a national level, and there are requirements for strategic development plans and local development plans at the regional and the local level to take air quality into consideration. So we've got certain things in there already. The strategy actually sets these out, but we do have a requirement for strategic and local development plans to take into account the implications of development on air quality. There's a bit of a typo in there. The impacts of development plans on the transport network must also be assessed in line with Transport Scotland's development planning and management transport appraisal guidance, and also strategic environmental assessment and environmental impact assessments that are done as part of plan making and planning applications. They have to identify potential effects of plans and developments on air quality. So we've got something already built in there, but potentially this new strategy is actually an opportunity for us. I think the strategy itself does recognise the cross-cutting role that planning can play. And as Janice mentioned right at the beginning of the day, the one sector, one profession can't do it alone. It's very much about collaboration, about working together, and about joining things together. And I think that's what the strategy is trying to start to do. So, key points for me about the strategy are about its influence and about its delivery. So, the placemaking actions that you'll see within the strategy when you get it yourself are quite different from the draft, and chairing the planning working group was a really positive experience. We had a really good mix of professionals around the table. A lot of you are in the room today, and I think we had some really positive discussions and tried to really hone these actions down. I think one of the problems is that I don't know how far up the agenda air quality comes within the average planner's day-to-day work. There are a range of issues that they have to deal with in terms of plan making or decision making. So potentially this strategy is actually a really positive starting point to engage with planners and actually try to push up the agenda a bit, and to try to work with planners, because we actually have quite an important role in trying to deliver the strategy. And RTPI is working with STEP and other partners to deliver some training for planners, because I think we can't expect planners to know everything about this, and I think it would be really important to have some training to really embed these issues as part of our plan making and decision making process. There's also a really interesting opportunity at the moment because the Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice, Communities and Pensioners' Rights, Alec Neil, has just announced a root and branch game-changing review of planning. So there actually is a really good opportunity. We've got the strategy sitting there. We've actually got a review of planning happening. There's currently an independent panel looking at some key issues, and there's an open consultation for people to respond by the 1st of December to actually give their views. And this could be an opportunity to maybe push air quality up the agenda a bit and put it on the radar of planners and plan makers. So I think we need to see it as a positive approach. As a working group, talking specifically about the actions, what we wanted to do was to make sure that actions were deliverable and measurable and that were rooted in legislation that we already have in planning. Otherwise, we're suggesting things that actually won't happen. So we wanted to make them quite direct and make sure that they would be achievable. I think we wanted to make sure there wasn't any double working as part of the actions and that there wasn't a massive extra burden on the planning profession that wasn't realistic, but still acknowledging the important role that planning can play in helping to achieve better air quality and tackling air pollution. So a key aspect of that was where planning can make a difference. As I mentioned before, planning is not the whole answer to achieving better air quality, but we've got an important role to play. So we need to look at the whole context of the strategy, all the other actions together, and show where planning can impact realistically, root these actions in legislative context that we already have. So the first action, top left there, is ensuring that future updates and revisions to Scottish planning policy and the National Planning Framework take account of the Cleaner Air for Scotland strategy. I think Scottish Government wants to make sure that the CAFs and its requirements are embedded at the national level, and I think that's really, really important. We need to have it in there at the national level to set the tone for all other planning policy. The next one, bottom left, is that Scottish Government expects planning authorities to review their local development plan, and that's also the strategic development plan as well, and revising at the next scheduled update to ensure policies are consistent with the Cleaner Air for Scotland strategy objectives and any local air quality action plans. There's a really important role of local development plans in managing new development and existing places. And I think that's key to have an action in there. Thanks. The strategy and the text as well also makes some suggestions where local development plans and strategic development planning authorities can start to look at their development planning and their development management work and where they can start embedding the strategy. A lot of them already do this, but I think one of the acknowledgements is that there's a bit of inconsistency across Scotland. So things like demonstrating how the land use planning system can contribute to achieving the planning objectives, the placemaking objectives, investigating how new developments might affect air quality now and in the future, and that comes in with the modelling and a lot of the transport work. Evaluating the impacts on the transport network in line with the Scottish Transport's DMP tag, and also locating new developments where they reduce the need to travel, to the whole placemaking agenda again. The third action is about training and about understanding the need for planners to be upskilled and to become more mindful of air quality issues. We did suggest as a working group that potentially Scottish Government could update PAN 51, Planning Advice Note, but I know that's not been taken on board fully, but kind of understand that now when the review of planning's been announced, so potentially not a very sensible thing to do for the Scottish Government to renew an advice note when we'll actually have a whole review of planning. So it's kind of more understandable. And the last one is the Scottish Government supporting SEPA in revising its guidance on strategic environmental assessment, which is a really key part of development planning. I think just to finish up, these actions the Institute, the Royal Town Planning Institute would support all of these actions. I think they're a really positive step forward, and I really appreciate that placemaking is in there as a title and as a whole chapter within the strategy. I really appreciate that we've been invited to actually input into it as well, and I think it's a really positive step that these actions will be monitored, and as the Minister said this morning, this is just the starting point, so we need to make sure that this strategy has influence and actually is delivered. Thank you.